Hi, this is Josh, aka MIT Pats fan, and I am going to debunk the DeflateGate controversy with one simple graph. I believe all the reported facts can be explained with a couple very simple assumptions and calculations, but since seeing is believing, I'm going to show you some of the experiments that I did that help prove what the physics say. These experiments were pretty simple to do, so I would suggest if you have any questions that you actually try them out yourself. They're fun and not too hard. So I started out with regulation football, and my house was 74 degrees. That regulation football got inflated to 12.5 psi, which I measured with a old school kind of inflation gauge and a fancy pants digital gauge. Both of them indicated the pressure was 12.5 psi. These are the same kind of measurements the referees would have taken in an indoor environment about a couple hours before kickoff. Now, after the referees have measured these footballs, they would have been taken outside to Gillette Stadium, which was reportedly around 50 degrees at kickoff time. I don't have a Gillette Stadium, but I do have a refrigerator, so we're going to use that as a quick and dirty proxy for the Gillette Stadium environment. My fridge is 40 degrees, so we're only going to leave these footballs in here for about 15 minutes, so we can get the effect of them getting down to around 48 degrees. Here's a little time lapse showing the 15 minutes. Now the math says that a 12.5 psi football inflated at 74 degrees when brought outside and acclimatized to 50-degree environment should measure 11.1 psi. That's what the math says. If anyone tells you differently, they're either using the wrong math or the wrong pressure or the wrong temperature or something like that. And we can see here that when we measure this football, it is actually right at 11.1 psi. So psi drop of 1.4 pounds is totally expected, both by the math and you can experimentally see it yourself. Others have done this as well and shown this to be true. So the question is, what's going to happen to these footballs over time? If the referees took in 12 Patriots footballs and started measuring them at the beginning of the half in a warm room, well, the balls over time will warm up and their pressure will actually rise. So something that might at the beginning of halftime measure 11.1 psi, as you start measuring successive balls, you're going to find out that within 5 or 10 minutes, that psi could actually rise by a full psi. This would give you a range of readings for each successive ball, even though they all started out at 12.5 psi and without any tampering or subterfuge whatsoever. It's just what happens when you take a set of measurements over a period of time. The surprising part is how quickly those measurements can change with exposure to different atmospheric environments. So now we're going to do the same experiment that we did with the 12.5 psi football, but this time with a 13.5 psi football inflated at 74 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to cool it down to approximately 50 degrees internal temperature in our Gillette Stadium proxy, and we're going to find out what happens to the psi of a football inflated at the extreme high end of the acceptable range. What happens to that as it cools down in the playing conditions we saw during the championship game? So the math tells us that a 13.5 psi football inflated at a room temperature when exposed to a 50-degree environment for a few hours is going to drop to 12.1 psi. And we can see when we measure it that is exactly what happens. So what the math and experiment shows is that all of the balls used during the championship game would have measured as deflated right at the beginning of halftime. But these higher pressure balls, if they're given time to warm back up, as little as 5 minutes into halftime, would not measure as deflated, but would have warmed up enough to get over the 12.5 psi threshold to now register as okay. So it's a pretty simple explanation that if you measure more inflated balls a little later on in halftime, you're going to find out that all of those footballs are quote unquote okay, even though they were deflated during play, just like the 12.5 psi footballs were. So what does that mean? That means that it is critically important at what time during halftime the referees measured the footballs, what procedure they went through. Is it likely that they measured the Patriots' balls first? Probably, given the allegations that were being tossed around. Is it likely that all of the Patriots' balls, if they started at 12.5, would have measured as deflated? It's an absolute certainty. Is it likely that if the Colts balls were slightly more inflated and measured a little later, that they would all check out as okay? Pretty clearly, that could be the case. So both the math and the experiments show that you can have pretty large swings in pressure inside a football based on the conditions that were reported around game time and based on when those measurements are taken. So for those of you that jump immediately to a conclusion of tampering for whatever reason, I suggest you go do some experiments yourself and convince yourself that all this could have happened without any need for foul play. Thanks very much and enjoy.